Asterisk, I never believed in fate until the day everything I touched began to fall apart. It felt like my life had turned into a series of cruel jokes played by the universe. My job was slipping away, my relationships were breaking, and every plan I made seemed to fail miserably. I used to tell myself, maybe it's just bad luck. But how long can bad luck last before it becomes a curse? The worst part was that I had started to believe I didn't deserve happiness. Then something strange happened. Something so small and unexpected that it completely changed the way I saw life. It started with a sick bird that I found outside my window one cold morning. Tell me honestly, if you saw a half-dead bird lying in the dirt, would you even stop to help it? Asterisk, that morning, the sky was gray and the air was biting cold. I had just lost a big project at work, which meant I'd probably lose my job soon. I was frustrated, angry, and tired of life. I opened my window for some fresh air, but instead, I saw this tiny bird struggling to breathe on the edge of the windowsill. Its feathers were wet, its eyes half closed, and its wings trembled as if it was begging the world not to give up on it. I don't know why, but something inside me softened. Maybe it was because I felt just as broken as that bird. Without thinking too much, I grabbed an old towel, carefully picked it up, and placed it inside a small cardboard box. That was the first time in months I felt like I had done something that actually mattered. Asterisk, I tried to feed it a few drops of water, but it didn't move. I thought it would die any minute. I sat beside the box for almost an hour, watching its tiny chest move up and down, weak, but alive. My heart hurt for that little creature. It was strange because I'd never been the type to care about animals much. But that day, I felt connected to it in a way I can't explain, like we were both trapped by something invisible, both waiting for a miracle. As I wrapped the towel around it, I whispered, "Hang in there, little one. If you can make it through tonight, I promise I'll take care of you." I didn't know then that those words were more for me than for the bird. Asterisk, the next morning, I woke up terrified to check the box. Part of me didn't want to look because I didn't want to see death again. But when I lifted the towel, the bird moved just slightly, but enough to show it was still alive. That small movement felt like hope breathing again in my life. I carefully cleaned its feathers and put some grains beside it. Slowly, I started making it a routine every morning before anything else. I'd check on the bird. I began to wake up earlier, feeling responsible for something again. It might sound silly, but watching that fragile creature fight for life gave me a reason to get out of bed. Each day, the bird became a mirror for me. Its struggle was my own. Its progress was my victory. Asterisk, a week passed and it started opening its eyes more often, chirping softly when it saw me. I even named it Shadow because it came into my life during my darkest days. Feeding it became a habit. A small, consistent act that slowly started changing something deep inside me. My mornings no longer started with anger or hopelessness. They began with care and calmness. I realized that when you nurture something else, you start healing your own heart. Every time Shadow took a sip of water or moved its wings, I felt like the universe was whispering to me, "You're not cursed. You're just disconnected from life." Asterisk, then one day, something unexpected happened. My boss called me to say that the project I'd lost wasn't actually canceled. The client had come back with a new proposal and wanted me to handle it. I couldn't believe it. It felt like life was suddenly giving me another chance. At first, I thought it was coincidence. But then I remembered something. The change didn't start outside. It started inside me the moment I began caring for that bird. My focus shifted from complaining to doing something meaningful. Maybe that small act of kindness had somehow shifted my energy. Maybe luck isn't some mysterious force after all. Maybe it's just the reflection of what we give out into the world. Asterisk, one morning, as I opened the window, Shadow tried to flutter its wings. It couldn't fly yet, but it was trying, determined. Watching it reminded me how many times I had tried and failed in my own life. There were moments when I wanted to give up completely, when I felt like I'd never escape my own bad luck. But Shadow didn't stop trying. That little bird, broken and weak, is teaching me the most powerful lesson I'd ever learned. Persistence is a habit, not a miracle. I started applying that same mindset to everything else. Instead of thinking I can't, I began asking myself, what if I try one more time? Asterisk. So that's where I found myself caring for a tiny bird that refused to die while my own life was slowly beginning to change. I started waking up earlier, cleaning my room, cooking proper meals, and even journaling. The habit of nurturing something daily had turned into the habit of nurturing myself. And every day as I watched Shadow grow stronger, I felt like my bad luck was fading, piece by piece. But deep down, I also knew that life doesn't change without testing you again. Asterisk, and I was right. Because just when everything seemed to be getting better, something happened that tested everything I had learned. It was a cold, stormy evening, and I came home to find Shadow lying still in the box, not moving, not breathing. My heart dropped. After all the progress, all the care, I thought I had lost it again. That night, I sat in silence, staring at the motionless body of the bird that had brought life back into mine. I felt anger rise in me again, that old voice whispering, "See? You can't escape bad luck." Asterisk. But then I remembered something, the promise I made to Shadow the first day I found it. If you make it through, I'll take care of you. Maybe now it was my turn to honor that promise in a different way. Maybe the lesson wasn't about saving it. Maybe it was about learning to let go with gratitude instead of despair. Asterisk. So that's the situation I was in, but I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, before I tell you what I did that night and how that one decision completely changed my life, I want you to pause for a moment and tell me what you would have done. Would you accept that fate was playing with you again? Or would you still believe that there's a reason behind every loss? Comment below and let me know what you think before we continue this story. Asterisk. I sat there in the quiet, the rain hitting my window like a rhythm of sorrow. The box lay in front of me, still and cold. For a few minutes, I couldn't move. I just stared at the tiny bird that had once been full of fight. My throat felt tight, and I whispered, "No, not again." It wasn't just about the bird, it was about everything I had ever lost. Every failure, every disappointment, every time I thought I was finally okay, only for life to pull me back down again. Shadow had become more than a bird. It was a symbol of hope I desperately needed. Losing it felt like the universe was mocking me again. But then, through my tears, I realized something powerful. Hope doesn't die just because the reason for it does. Hope lives as long as we choose to keep it alive. Asterisk. I lifted Shadow gently, feeling the weightless body in my hands. It was strange how something so small could hold so much meaning. I decided not to throw it away like trash, the way I used to discard things that hurt me. Instead, I took a deep breath, went out into the rain, and buried it under the small tree near my building. My hands were shaking, but my heart was strangely calm. As I covered the little grave, I said softly, "Thank you for saving me." That was the moment I realized the bird might have died, but the habit it had created inside me was still alive. And that was the real miracle. Asterisk. The next few days were hard. The room felt empty without Shadow's tiny chirps. Every morning when I woke up, I'd instinctively turn toward the window, expecting to see that little box. But instead of falling back into sadness, I decided to keep doing what I had learned. I still woke up early. I still cleaned my space. I still took a few minutes each morning to be grateful. That simple habit, the one that started because of Shadow, had already become part of who I was. And slowly my life began to take shape again. Only this time with real strength. Asterisk. One day, about 2 weeks later, something happened that I'll never forget. I was sitting near the same window where I had first found Shadow, sipping my coffee, lost in thought. Out of nowhere, I heard a faint chirping sound. I looked up, and there on the tree branch outside my window was a small bird, almost identical to Shadow. My heart stopped for a second. I know it probably wasn't the same one, but something in me wanted to believe it was. The bird looked straight at me for a few seconds, then spread its wings and flew into the open sky. I smiled. It was like a silent message from the universe. You did it. You changed your fate. Asterisk. From that day on, I made that simple habit a permanent part of my life. Every morning, I spend the first 10 minutes doing one small act of care. Sometimes it's watering plants. Sometimes feeding stray cats. Sometimes writing down 3 things I'm grateful for. It doesn't matter what the act is. What matters is the energy behind it. When you give love or care into the world consistently, the world starts responding differently. My bad luck slowly disappeared, not because magic happened, but because I stopped living like a victim. I learned that fate isn't something written in the stars, something written in the choices we make every single day. Asterisk, a few months later. That same work project I thought I had lost turned into the biggest success of my career. My boss promoted me, my finances improved, and I even started volunteering on weekends at a local animal rescue center. The irony wasn't lost on me. The person who once ignored life's smallest signs was now spending time saving lives. But more than success or money, what changed most was how I saw myself. I wasn't the unlucky one anymore. I wasn't cursed or broken. I was someone who had learned how to turn pain into purpose. Asterisk, there were still tough days, of course. Life never stops testing you. But now, whenever things got dark, I remembered that tiny bird fighting for its life in my hands. I remembered how even in its weakest moment, it never stopped breathing until its very last second. And I'd remind myself, as long as I'm still breathing, I still have a chance to change my story. That thought alone has pulled me out of so many breakdowns. It's like shadow became part of my soul, a whisper reminding me to never give up, no matter how hopeless things look. Asterisk, so now, when people tell me they're stuck in bad luck or that their fate is against them, I tell them this story. I tell them about the morning I found a dying bird and how that moment completely changed my life. I tell them that you don't have to do something grand to change your destiny. You just need one small, consistent habit, something that reconnects you with life. For me, it was caring for a bird. For someone else, it might be helping a neighbor, showing gratitude, or just being kind to themselves. The magic isn't in the act. It's in the consistency. Asterisk, I want you to really think about that. What if your bad luck isn't bad luck at all? What if it's just life's way of pushing you to start caring again, to build habits that make you stronger? Fate changes the moment you decide to take responsibility for your energy. That's the truth I learned from Shadow. Asterisk. So if you've been feeling stuck, unlucky, or hopeless, start small. Choose one thing you can nurture every day. A plant, a pet, a journal, even yourself. Watch how that small act begins to shift your world. You'll see that luck isn't something you find. It's something you create. Asterisk, I know my story might sound simple, but for me, it was everything. A sick bird taught me more about life, hope, and fate than any book or person ever could. It taught me that miracles don't always come as lightning bolts. Sometimes they come as fragile wings and a quiet heartbeat in a cardboard box. Asterisk, so that's my story. The story of how one small act of kindness turned my curse into a blessing, and how a sick bird helped me find my way back to life. If you've ever felt like the world was against you, I hope this story reminds you that you have the power to change it. You just need one simple habit to shift everything. Asterisk. Like this video if you believe kindness can change fate. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this one, and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what small habit has ever changed your life. I'll see you all in the next story.